I'm telling you right now, this wasn't just another random TV take playing in the background. This was one of those moments where everything suddenly lines up and you realize the conversation around this team might be about to shift in a serious way. I was barely paying attention at first, just letting the segment run, and then the name hit, Jalen Johnson tied to the Lakers, and the entire tone of that discussion changed instantly. You could feel it. Not hype, not noise, something more calculated, almost like they were laying out a blueprint. What stood out wasn't just the idea itself, but how clean the logic was behind it. The Lakers aren't lacking star power. That's never been the issue. The problem has been what happens in between the stars, the stretches where energy drops, where possessions get heavy, where everything starts relying on one player to fix it. And that's where this conversation hit differently, because it wasn't about adding another name. It was about fixing a pattern that's been showing up all season. They went straight into the current situation, and let's not pretend this roster hasn't been walking a tightrope. Injuries, uncertainty, players in and out, and the reality that LeBron, even still playing at an elite level, can't be expected to carry every possession deep into the postseason. That version of constant takeover isn't sustainable anymore, and the team hasn't consistently provided the kind of support that balances that load. That's not criticism, that's just where things stand right now. And this is where Johnson's profile started to make too much sense to ignore. A 23-year-old wing with size, length, and real explosiveness, not just in highlights, but in the way he plays every possession. Someone who doesn't wait for the game to come to him. Someone who creates pressure just by moving, by cutting, by running the floor like it actually matters every single time. That's been missing. You've seen it. There are stretches where the Lakers look a step behind, not because of effort, but because the roster just doesn't have enough of that natural pace and physical presence anymore. Right, Lake Show forever, if you believe the Lakers can still make another serious run. Then they broke down the fit next to LeBron, and this is where it got real interesting, because the conversation wasn't about shooting first, it was about movement, about understanding space, about having a player who doesn't stand still when defenses collapse. LeBron is still seeing the game at a level nobody else does, but if the players around him aren't reacting, cutting, attacking those openings, it limits everything. Johnson changes that dynamic immediately. He's not waiting on the perimeter. He's cutting behind the defense. He's sliding into gaps. He's forcing defenders to make decisions they don't want to make. And when you think about transition, that's another layer that hit hard in that segment. How many times this season have you seen a rebound turn into a slow push instead of an opportunity? That hesitation, that lack of numbers running the floor, it kills easy points. Johnson is the opposite of that. He runs every time. He fills lanes, he attacks the rim, and suddenly those empty possessions turn into momentum plays. That's not a small detail. That shifts games. Before we continue this story, subscribe to the channel so you stay updated with everything happening with the Lakers. Defensively, that's where the argument really locked in, because the issue hasn't been the anchor inside. When the paint is protected, things look solid. The breakdowns have been happening before that, on the perimeter, on those first actions where someone gets beat and everything starts collapsing. Johnson gives you a body that can stay in front, switch, contest, and recover. That alone changes how the entire defense functions, because now you're not constantly scrambling to fix the first mistake. Comment, purple and gold never fades, if you know this franchise always comes back into the fight. And then the part that you can't ignore if you're thinking beyond just this season, the timeline. Right now, everything still revolves around maximizing what's left at the highest level. But at the same time, there's a real question about what comes next. And this is where adding someone like Johnson isn't just about now. It's about planting something for later without sacrificing the present. A player still developing, still climbing, but already capable of impacting winning. There was also something said about energy that stuck with me more than anything else. Not talent, not schemes, energy. The difference between a team that flips a switch and a team that stays locked in from start to finish. Veterans bring experience, but they also manage their moments. A player like Johnson doesn't operate like that. He plays every possession like it matters, and that kind of presence forces everyone else to match it. And if you've been watching closely, you know exactly why that matters right now. Right, Lakers pride, if you have supported this team through every era. Because this isn't just about adding a piece, it's about changing how this team feels on the floor. And once you start looking at it from that angle, the conversation shifts completely. It's no longer about whether this is a good idea. It becomes about why this kind of move hasn't already been prioritized. Because this isn't just about talent on paper, it's about restoring a certain identity on the floor. There have been too many stretches this season where the pace drops, where the pressure disappears and everything slows into predictable possessions. Another layer that really stood out in that breakdown was the mental effect a player like this brings. When you have someone constantly attacking space, cutting with purpose, running every lane like it matters, it forces the entire team to stay engaged. You don't get to coast through possessions. You don't get to watch plays develop. You either move with intention or you get left behind. And over the course of a playoff series, that kind of internal pressure changes outcomes. There was also a subtle point about how this kind of addition reshapes roles without forcing drastic changes. It doesn't take anything away from your core pieces. It actually simplifies things around them. It allows your primary players to operate in cleaner situations with less resistance, fewer bodies collapsing, and more options opening up naturally instead of being forced late in the clock. Comment, the banners tell the story if you believe the history of this franchise still matters today. And here's where things start to feel bigger than just a single move. Because if you bring in a player like this, you're not just filling a gap. You're setting a tone for what this team is supposed to look like moving forward. Faster decisions, more physical presence, less reliance on bailout possessions. That's the kind of shift that doesn't always show up in headlines immediately, but you feel it over time. Now, real talk for a second. If you're following everything happening around this team right now, this is exactly the moment where things can turn quickly. News like this doesn't stay quiet for long, and when it starts gaining traction, it usually means something is already moving behind the scenes. So if you don't want to miss what's coming next, this is the time to lock in. Hit subscribe right now, because the next updates on this situation could drop at any moment, and they're not the kind you want to catch late. And the deeper you go into this discussion, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just about solving current issues. It's about positioning the franchise for what comes next without losing sight of what still matters today. That balance is rare. Most teams either go all in on the present or shift too early toward the future. This is one of those rare opportunities to do both at the same time. Right Law still believes if you trust the Lakers can rise when the pressure gets real. Because when everything is on the line, this organization has never been about staying comfortable. And that's exactly why this kind of discussion carries weight right now, not later. Timing matters, especially for a franchise that doesn't operate with patience when there's a real chance to compete. You can feel when something is building, when the front office starts evaluating more than just short-term fixes, and this feels like one of those moments where direction can quietly shift. What really stayed with me from that segment was how clearly they connected all the dots. Not just what Johnson does individually, but how his presence changes the behavior of everyone around him. The spacing becomes more active, the pace becomes more natural, and suddenly possessions don't feel forced anymore. That's been one of the biggest issues. Too many sequences where everything looks difficult, where the offense has to grind for every decent look. There's also the physical side of it that can't be overlooked. Over a long playoff run, legs matter. Recovery matters. Having someone who can consistently bring energy without needing the ball changes how you survive those deeper series. It allows the team to sustain pressure instead of fading late in games, which has been a recurring concern. Comment, never count out the Lake Show if you know this team is always one move away from changing everything. And defensively, the ripple effect becomes even more important the more you think about it. When you stabilize the perimeter, everything behind it settles down. Rotations become cleaner, help defense becomes more controlled, and you're no longer constantly reacting. That shift from reacting to dictating is what separates teams that survive from teams that actually advance. There's also a leadership dynamic here that doesn't get talked about enough. When effort is consistent from one player, especially a younger one, it sets a standard without needing speeches. It forces accountability in a way that veteran-heavy teams sometimes lack over long stretches. That kind of internal push is hard to manufacture. It has to come from personnel. If you've been following this channel for a while, you already know how quickly things can change around this team. And right now, this feels like the kind of situation where one update leads to another, and suddenly the entire conversation looks different overnight. So if you want to stay ahead of that curve and not hear about it after everyone else already knows, this is the moment to subscribe and stay locked in, because what's coming next might redefine how this roster is viewed heading into the biggest stretch of the season. Right championship standard if you believe the Lakers should always be chasing the top, because at the end of the day, this franchise doesn't measure progress the same way others do. If you follow the Lakers and don't want to miss the next big story around this franchise, make sure to subscribe right now. It's measured by banners, by expectations that never change, no matter the roster, no matter the moment. And when a move like this starts making sense from every angle, fit, energy, defense, future, that's when you know it's not just talk. It's something that can actually reshape what we're watching unfold. There's a feeling building around this situation that something is about to break open. And if it does, it won't just be another adjustment. It'll be a shift that carries into everything that comes next. Comment. This story is far from over if you think there is still another big chapter waiting for this team. And if you want to stay ahead of every move, every update, and every inside angle before it hits everywhere else, make sure you're subscribed right now. Because when this develops further, you're going to want the full picture the moment it drops.